After class, Bronte, the most popular girl in school, tricked me into an empty classroom. I thought she wanted to tell me something, but as soon as we entered, she started screaming that I was bullying her. Her boyfriend, Simon, the school bully, came running and knocked out my teeth. The headmaster, Mr. Atkinson, would repeatedly mention this incident during assemblies, publicly humiliating me. He even said that the school had persuaded Bronte not to go to the police for the sake of its reputation, and that I should be grateful for the school's handling of the situation and Bronte's forgiveness. I became a social pariah, spat on wherever I went. Soon after, my mental state deteriorated, and I couldn't possibly sit for my A-levels. I had no choice but to drop out. Years later, I heard some devastating news. Simon had inherited millions, Bronte had become a wealthy socialite, and Mr. Atkinson had retired with honors. Filled with resentment, I coughed up blood and died. When I opened my eyes again, I found myself back on the day Bronte had lured me into the classroom. This time, I had no intention of explaining myself. First things first, I locked the door. Ding! Story Shots reminds you to click the subscribe button at the bottom right corner to read the full novel. Calvin Johnson, come in here. I need to have a word with you. Bronte Calhoun leaned against a desk in an abandoned classroom, twirling a strand of hair around her finger as she smiled coyly. She was stunningly beautiful, and this alluring demeanor would surely captivate many. But in my heart, there was only a raging hatred. I didn't know what her intentions were, nor did I care to find out. Seeing me remain at the doorway, Bronte feigned annoyance. "What are you thinking about?" I flashed an innocent smile and asked, "What did you want to see me about, Bronte?" With that, I strode into the room just as I had in my previous life. This time, however, I made sure to lock the door behind me. Bronte didn't notice this detail. She giggled and pulled out her notebook, saying in a sweet voice, "Calvin, there's a problem I can't solve. Would you mind helping me?" I pretended to be curious and asked, "Why not ask in your own classroom? It's quieter here." Bronte raised an eyebrow at me, her eyes conveying a different meaning as she breathed. "We can be alone. No one will disturb us." I smiled and casually moved closer. Bronte's lips curled into a smug smile, likely thinking her plan had succeeded. As I reached her side, Bronte suddenly gripped my wrist tightly. "Calvin, this question is so difficult." Her grip was painfully strong, her nails nearly breaking the skin and leaving scratch marks on my arm. But I paid no attention to this, my eyes scanning the surroundings. We were on the 4th floor, so no one could climb in through the windows. The back door was blocked by a pile of discarded desks and chairs, so there was no worry about anyone barging in, locked or not. My unusual reaction gave Bronte an ominous feeling. "Doesn't it hurt?" Bronte Calhoun asked suspiciously as she released her grip. I grinned widely. How could it hurt? I feel excited all over. Compared to the pain I had endured in my past life, this little scratch was nothing. She had intended to leave scratch marks on my hand as evidence that I had bullied her. Before others arrived, she planned to mess up her hair a bit to make it look more convincing. But my reaction was completely unexpected, giving her an eerie feeling. Bronte instinctively took 2 steps back, her eyes betraying a hint of uneasiness. "Forget it, I don't want your tutoring anymore. You can leave." "How can that be? Didn't we just agree? No one can stop me from teaching you today, not even you." As she retreated, I advanced, step by step, until I had her cornered against the wall. Seeing the situation turn unfavorable, Bronte began to threaten me. "Don't come any closer, or I'll scream. Go ahead and scream. Let's see who can save you." I suddenly paused for a moment, feeling like I had become the villain from a movie. Based on my past life experience, I knew her bully of a boyfriend was likely hiding nearby. As soon as Bronte called out, he would rush in to play the hero. But how could I let her call for help? Just as Bronte was about to shout, I acted swiftly, grabbing a piece of chalk and throwing it into her mouth. "Cough, cough." Bronte choked and coughed violently. As soon as she managed to cough out the chalk, I clamped my hand over her mouth. With one hand pressed firmly against her lips, I thought of all the cruel things she had done to me in the past. Without hesitation, I raised my fist and struck. Bang! A dull thud echoed through the room. This punch contained years of my pent-up anger and resentment. Bronte's face turned ashen, her body curling up like a shrimp as she crumpled to the floor. The look in her eyes as she gazed up at me was one of pure terror. My emotions were running high as I demanded, "Why did you choose me? Why?" Her boyfriend was Simon Farley. The Farley family had donated £100,000 to the school. Because of this, the school turned a blind eye to their bullying of other students. But I couldn't understand why, given Bronte and Simon's personalities, they would go to such lengths to set me up. If they wanted to hurt someone, they could have just done it directly. Bronte was frightened by my demeanor. She could only shake her head, mumbling incoherently, unable to form a complete sentence. After all, she was just a year 13 student. My punch had shattered all of her pride. I was certain that Bronte knew something, but she was unwilling to tell the truth. This made me angrier by the second. The rage inside me was burning like wildfire, and I felt like I was about to explode. Just then, there was a sudden, urgent knocking at the door. "Open up. Get out here now." Simon's voice boomed from the other side. Hearing this, Bronte suddenly found her courage. "Calvin, you dare hit me? I'll kill you." She grabbed a pencil from the floor and lunged at my eyes. I was in a state of extreme agitation, my senses and reflexes at their peak. I caught her wrist and wrenched the pencil from her grasp. Still trying to fight back? I was beyond furious. In the next second, I unleashed a flurry of punches. This move I had learned from Master Atkinson. My fists rained down on Bronte's face like a machine gun. "Ah!" Bronte's piercing screams filled the air. Bang! Calvin Johnson kicked open the door, bursting in from outside. I was holding Bronte Calhoun's hair, slowly turning my head to reveal a chilling smile. "You've finally arrived." I had considered secretly recording everything earlier, then throwing the evidence in the headmaster's face to prove my innocence. But thinking carefully, I realized that in the face of money, the truth isn't always that important. Even if I took evidence of Bronte and Simon bullying other students to the school leadership, these two might not receive the punishment they deserved. After all, with their family backgrounds, it didn't matter whether they stayed in school or not. Their families had already arranged for them to study abroad to polish their credentials. With the Farley family's influence, if I missed this chance, it would be much harder to get revenge in the future. This was a one-time opportunity. Thinking about this, I felt reinvigorated, as if I had been set alight again. "Help me!" Bronte managed to choke out 2 words. Simon Farley steeled himself and charged at me like a raging bull. His physical condition wasn't very strong. Usually when bullying other students, he relied on his family's status to ensure they wouldn't dare fight back. As Simon charged recklessly, I dodged to the side. Unable to stop his momentum, he crashed into a nearby desk, causing a loud bang as he knocked a pile of desks askew. Seizing the opportunity, I stepped forward swiftly and kicked him in the back. Simon cried out in pain and fell to the ground. Before he could get up, I delivered another kick to his backside. "Is that all you've got?" I sneered, kicking him as I spoke, my voice dripping with contempt. Simon Farley and Bronte Calhoun were the source of all my suffering. I was determined to pay back every bit of humiliation I'd endured over the years. "Come on, fight back. Scream," I taunted, landing another kick as Simon tried to get up. "Arg!" Simon roared, nearly driven mad with rage. He'd never been in such a humiliating fight in his life. But to me, his anger was nothing more than impotent fury. Bronte was stunned, clearly out of her depth in this situation. Simon grabbed a nearby chair, turning to swing it at me. I easily kicked it away and slapped him hard across the face. Smack! A sharp crack echoed through the classroom, which suddenly fell silent. Simon froze for a moment, then exploded. "Calvin Johnson, you dare hit me? My father won't let you get away with this." "Your father? If he dares show up, I'll thrash him too. I laughed coldly, ignoring his threats and continuing my assault. I only accepted two outcomes. Either he'd beat me to a pulp, or I'd do the same to him. The classroom once again filled with pig-like squeals of pain. Suddenly, a voice bellowed, "Stop this at once!" A middle-aged man rushed in from outside, shoving me aside. "Why are you attacking him?" he demanded angrily. Seeing his face, I instinctively stopped. It was Mr. Jeffrey Atkinson, the head of discipline. Pushing his gold-rimmed glasses up his nose, Mr. Atkinson looked down at me imperiously. "Which form are you in?" Simon, clutching his face, managed to croak out, "He's Calvin Johnson from 6B. "And you're Simon Farley?" Mr. Atkinson was taken aback. After confirming it was indeed Simon on the floor, he flew into a rage. "Calvin Johnson? Who taught you to behave like this?" I clenched my fists tightly. Memories from my past life flooded back. Every morning at the assembly, he would drag me onto the stage to humiliate me. In this respect, the harm Jeffrey Atkinson had caused me far exceeded that of Simon Farley and Bronte Calhoun. Thinking of this, I couldn't help but laugh at myself. How foolish I had been to think I could prove my innocence to such a person. What an absurd idea. "I'm talking to you. Are you deaf?" Jeffrey Atkinson's tone grew increasingly hostile as I remained silent. "Where's that viciousness you had when you were hitting people earlier?" As he spoke, his hand reached for my ear. He always had a habit of slapping the back of my head and pulling my ears. The feeling of fear and pain still makes me shudder when I think about it. "Jeffrey Atkinson." I grabbed his wrist, grinding out the 3 syllables through clenched teeth. At this moment, my anger had reached its peak. I felt completely ignited, more than ever before. Jeffrey Atkinson had retired with a high rank and had also latched onto the Farley family's influence. Seeing my enemy living such a comfortable life was worse than death for me. Now that I'm back, I won't let this happen again. With this thought, I felt a surge of power flowing through me. What are you trying to do?" Jeffrey Atkinson said, his voice betraying his fear despite his attempt at intimidation. "I'm warning you, the person you hit is the Farley family's eldest son. If you go to the Farleys now and beg for forgiveness, there might still be a way out. Otherwise—" Before he could finish, I couldn't bear to listen anymore. "Go to hell," I shouted. I was furious, swinging my fist towards his head. Jeffrey Atkinson, being overweight and out of shape, was no match for a fight. He instantly collapsed to the ground, unable to get up. "Why does everyone want to hurt me?" I shouted, as if trying to release all the pent-up anger from 2 lifetimes. 1 punch, 2 punches, 3 punches. I swung my fists wildly, each blow landing with tremendous force, until my muscles began to ache and my energy waned, forcing me to slow down. "How can you be a teacher if you can't tell right from wrong?" I was about to throw another punch when I caught sight of Simon Farley trying to escape. Without hesitation, I grabbed a nearby chair and hurled it at him. Simon hadn't expected me to notice his subtle movement in such a state. Bang! The chair struck Simon's back, causing him to stumble. I quickly seized the opportunity, pouncing on him and pinning him firmly to the ground. "Help! Calvin's attacking me!" Simon's cries for help alerted everyone in the building. This was an abandoned classroom, but it was only a stone's throw from the other rooms. More and more students began to gather around. When they saw it was Simon Farley calling for help, they all stopped in their tracks. "Bloody hell! Who's this bloke? He dares to hit Simon Farley." I'll admit, this is the best news I've seen all year. It's getting me all fired up. I wouldn't dare hit him even in my dreams. The students had no intention of helping. They all stood at the doorway, watching the spectacle unfold. As they watched, they noticed Jeffrey Atkinson and Bronte Calhoun. Blimey, that mess of a person is Bronte, and the other one's the head teacher. 3 against 1 and they still got thrashed? Do they even know how to fight? The one throwing punches is Calvin Johnson. Who would have thought? Isn't he usually quite mild-mannered? Looks like they pushed him too far. I'd say they had it coming. The students watched with growing excitement, none of them deterred by the violence unfolding before them. One of them glanced around, noticing that no other teachers had arrived yet. With a shout, he ran towards Jeffrey Atkinson. Jeffrey had just picked up his shattered gold-rimmed glasses and put them on when he saw a large foot coming straight at him. "Big dummy, what do you think you're doing?" This student was burly but looked rather dim-witted, earning him the nickname Big Dummy. Big Dummy's foot stopped mid-air, and he grinned sheepishly. "Sir, do you like my new trainers?" Jeffrey, already badly hurt, fainted on the spot from the shock. As for Bronte, she had been lying there peacefully since the beginning. By this point, I was nearly exhausted, lacking the strength to continue fighting. I cursed the limitations of human endurance, unable to summon any more energy. "The headmaster's coming!" someone shouted. The headmaster pushed through the crowd with security guards, squeezing into the classroom. Big Dummy urgently whispered to me, "Run!" The headmaster glared at him. "Arrest this accomplice too." Oh no! Big Dummy was stunned, becoming an accomplice without having done anything. "Headmaster, I didn't touch anyone. I just lifted my foot a bit. Honestly, I wasn't planning to stomp on the deputy head." Big Dummy tried to explain, but only managed to dig himself deeper. We were tied up and locked in a small room. The head of security asked, "Headmaster, should we call the police?" The headmaster shook his head vigorously. "No, not now at least. If this gets out, I can kiss my job goodbye. First, we need to inform the Farley family. The most important thing now is to appease their anger." He shot me a fierce look. "Hand this lad over to the Farleys as well." I was in high spirits and didn't bother retaliating. The most crucial thing now was to regain my strength and figure out how to untie these ropes. Looking around, I spotted a small knife on a nearby table and managed to conceal it in my palm. The ambulance arrived shortly after. I leaned against the window, watching as Simon Farley and the other two were carried into the ambulance. I could still faintly hear the chatter of my classmates. "What a shame! A legend has fallen. We've seen plenty of hopeless romantics, but this is the first time we've seen a true fighter. I've been wanting to do that for ages. I have to admit, Calvin Johnson is the bravest bloke in our school." My mood lightened considerably. Curious, I asked Big Dummy, "Why did you act so rashly? Jeffrey Atkinson smacks you on the head every day, but I've never seen you get angry about that." Big Dummy and I weren't in the same class, but we came from the same village. There used to be 2 village idiots back home. After Big Dummy and I left for school, there were no more idiots left in the village. Big Dummy was someone I could trust. A flash of anger crossed Big Dummy's eyes. "I wanted to avenge our dead classmate." "What dead classmate?" I couldn't quite understand. Big Dummy seemed to recall something terrifying. He shrank back, muttering, "A classmate from our form went missing. The night before last, I saw with my own eyes, the head teacher and another man digging a huge hole behind the hill." I was stunned by his words. I thought I was brave enough, but I never imagined they could be so ruthless. "Tell me more details." Big Dummy explained further. There was a small hill behind the school, quite close to the school fence. The night before last, he had returned to school too late and thought of climbing over the fence from the back hill. Unexpectedly, he stumbled upon Jeffrey Atkinson burying someone on the hill. Big Dummy's thought process was different from others. Worried about getting into trouble, he ran away first. I continued to ask, "Did you see clearly who the other person was?" Big Dummy nodded with certainty. "I saw clearly. It was Simon Farley." My eyes lit up instantly. It made sense when I thought about it. Simon Farley had been throwing his weight around in school, showing no respect for life. It wouldn't be surprising if he had caused someone's death. A moment later, the door opened and a group of people walked in. A middle-aged man asked, "Are you Calvin Johnson?" I nodded without a hint of fear. "That's right. Are you sent by the Farleys for revenge?" "I'm just a butler, responsible for bringing you to see the madam," he replied. He looked me up and down, sneering, "Your looks aren't bad, but your manners are lacking." After all, you're nothing but a bastard. How dare you challenge our young master? What do you mean? I frowned, sensing there was more to his words than met the eye. The butler said nothing more. At the hospital, Simon Farley lay in a private room, still unconscious. A middle-aged couple stood by the bed, both looking grim. I had seen them in the news before. The man was Fletcher Farley, and the woman was Lorinda Calhoun. They were both in their second marriages. Lorinda was already pregnant when she met Fletcher. 3 months after their wedding, she gave birth to a son, Simon Farley. Fletcher had been married before and reportedly had another son. Many locals knew about this gossip. I only heard about it from other students after Simon beat someone up once. The butler bowed respectfully. "Madam, I've brought him as requested." "I see." Lorinda waved her hand, gesturing for the others to leave. The butler carefully ushered everyone out. Only the 4 of us remained in the room. Lorinda glared at me venomously. "How dare a bastard like you hit my son?" As soon as the words left her mouth, she raised her hand and slapped me hard across the face. The slap was so forceful that blood immediately welled up in the corner of my mouth. Seeing Lorinda about to strike again, I didn't hold back this time. I kicked her hard in the stomach. "Ah!" Lorinda Calhoun let out a piercing scream as she was kicked with such force that she flew backwards like a cannonball, crashing hard against the wall. Fletcher Farley, seeing this, rushed over to help her up. However, Lorinda slapped Fletcher across the face, snarling, "You useless fool! Is standing by and watching all you're good for?" Fletcher's expression was complex, his face etched with difficulty as he said, "But he's still my flesh and blood, no matter what. Besides, I've wronged him all these years." As these words left his mouth, I felt as if I'd been struck by lightning. I finally understood why Simon Farley hadn't confronted me directly, but instead had gone to such lengths to set me up and frame me. They wanted me dead, and this was their way of achieving it. Lorinda screeched at the top of her lungs, "Fletcher Farley, don't you forget who helped you get where you are today. Do you really want this bastard to claim his place in the family?" Fletcher hung his head, his face a picture of dejection, looking for all the world like a browbeaten housewife. "Is this really your reason for targeting me? You could have simply never told me the truth. Why go to such disgusting lengths?" I gritted my teeth, my fists clenched tight. There was no joy in finding my birth family, only an unprecedented fury burning within me. A cruel smile twisted Lorinda's lips as she coldly stated, "Your very existence is an insult to me. You should never have been born. The Farley estate will belong to my son alone." With that, she clapped her hands, summoning the butler and his staff back into the room. I was shaking with rage. At this distance, if it came to blows, I was confident I could take one of them down with me. Fletcher, sensing the danger, tried to placate his wife. "Darling, couldn't we just let this go? For my sake? The doctor said our son will be fine." Hearing the words "will be fine" only made me regret my actions. I should have hit Simon harder. I hadn't spent nearly enough time beating him. Lorinda Calhoun contemptuously patted Fletcher Farley's face. "Your dignity? What dignity do you have? Go home and kneel for punishment." Fletcher Farley's expression instantly turned more sour than if he'd swallowed a fly. In the past, Lorinda had been domineering, but at least she'd maintained some semblance of respect for him in front of others. Now, she didn't even bother to pretend. It wasn't just this time, things were much the same at home. Lorinda was always going on about how exceptional her "one that got away" was. Influenced by this, even Simon Farley looked down on his father. Lorinda turned to me again, sneering, "If you get on your knees and kowtow to me now, I might be in a good mood and still give you some dignity." Seeing me standing still without reacting, Fletcher Farley anxiously prompted, "Calvin, what are you waiting for? Hurry up and kneel to your Aunt Lorinda. Do you want to fight all these people?" I couldn't help but ask, "Are you a house husband?" Fletcher Farley instinctively shook his head. If he were a house husband, given Lorinda's domineering attitude, she certainly wouldn't have allowed Simon to take his father's surname. However, His startup capital had all come from Lorinda, and coupled with her unique assertiveness, this had left him unable to hold his head high. I looked at him with contempt and said, "You're truly pathetic." Fletcher Farley was provoked by my words and angrily retorted, "What nonsense are you spouting? Is this how you talk to your own father?" Just then, Simon's voice came from the bed. "Mom, I'm in so much pain." Lorinda's face lit up with joy, overcome with concern. "Oh, my precious son has finally woken up. Mummy's been so worried." Simon was about to complain when he caught sight of me. Gritting his teeth, he said, "Mom, sort him out quickly. I want to see him cry with my own eyes." Fletcher Farley quickly stepped forward to comfort his son. "Simon, you need to rest and recover first. Once you're feeling better, we can all sit down and talk this through properly." Simon Farley glanced at him scornfully. "You're not my real father. Of course you'd take that bastard's side." Fletcher was momentarily speechless. Lorinda Calhoun pointed at me viciously. "Didn't you hear what my son said? Hold him down and beat him until he cries. Then cripple him." Several burly men slowly approached me. Just as they were about to grab me, I shouted and broke free from the ropes, lunging towards Lorinda. Lorinda's face turned pale with fright. No one had expected I could break loose from my restraints. "Protect Mrs. Calhoun." Not daring to take risks, they all moved to shield Lorinda. In doing so, they left the patient on the bed completely exposed. I turned to Simon with a wicked grin. Simon's heart sank. The butler was the first to realize, "Oh no, he's going for the young master." In the next instant, I suddenly changed direction and rushed to Simon's side. "What are you doing?" Simon trembled in fear, an intense chill of death enveloping him. Seeing the knife in my hand, Lorinda didn't dare act rashly. She could only threaten, "Let go of my son this instant. If you dare harm him, I'll make sure you suffer a fate worse than death." I looked at her as if she were an idiot, then raised my arm. With a loud smack, my palm struck Simon's face hard. His face was wrapped in bandages, muffling the sound of the slap. But I didn't care about the sensation. My main goal was to vent my anger. "See? I just did. What are you going to do about it?" My tone was extremely arrogant. Lorinda's hatred for me reached its peak, but she could only restrain herself, not daring to act rashly. I didn't stop there, but continued to strike him furiously. "You think you can beat me? You think you can plot against me?" The humiliation of my past life kept replaying in my mind. "I want to see you cry. Cry for me." Under my coercion, Simon Farley instantly broke down in tears. "Is this good enough?" Everything was falling into place. One could say it wasn't acting, but pure emotion. I was quite satisfied with this. "Now I want to see you smile. Smile for me." Simon could hardly manage a smile. Even the slightest movement of his mouth would pull at his facial injuries. "Why aren't you smiling? Are you naturally averse to smiling?" I raised my hand again, and Simon, startled by the sudden movement, had an involuntary reaction. His body trembled, and a smell of urine filled the hospital room. "Please, no more hitting. You'll kill me if you continue." "I won't dare do it again. I know I was wrong," Simon begged, crying incessantly. My emotions remained unmoved. People like Simon never truly understand their mistakes. They only learn to fear the consequences. If given another chance, he would act even more ruthlessly than he did today. Lorinda Calhoun spoke up. "Calvin, what will it take for you to let him go?" Fletcher Farley chimed in. "Don't do anything rash. We can give you money. How about 1/10 of our estate? Is that enough?" I shot him a contemptuous glance. "Is he even your son? Why are you protecting him so fiercely?" Fletcher was instantly rendered speechless. How could he not care? He had been swallowing his pride all these years. In the eyes of Lorinda and her son, his status was only slightly higher than the family dog. I couldn't be bothered to waste more words with them, nor did I want to play out some drama about true and false heirs. "All of you go stand against the wall. Don't blame me for being harsh if you don't." Fearing they might try to ambush me, I herded them to the corner of the room. Just as they had taken their positions, a middle-aged woman pushed a wheelchair into the room. "Uncle, Aunt, is Simon awake?" The newcomer was none other than Bronte Calhoun. Oh my days! I couldn't help but feel overjoyed, silently thanking nature for this gift. No need to go looking anymore. They've come right to me. Bronte Calhoun's face was wrapped in bandages. If I hadn't remembered the few teeth she'd lost, I might not have recognized her. As for the woman pushing the wheelchair, she was clearly Bronte's mum. It was then that Bronte noticed my presence. Suddenly, she became extremely nervous, her whole body involuntarily trembling. I must say, she and Simon Farley truly are a match made in heaven. Even their startled responses are nearly identical. Bronte's mum quickly asked, "What's wrong?" Bronte, afraid to meet my gaze, timidly said, He's Calvin Johnson." "What?" Bronte's mum was shocked. She then pointed at me and started berating me. "So you're the one who beat up our precious daughter like this? Are you even a man?" I chuckled. "Why don't you ask your precious daughter what she's been up to at school?" Bronte's mum confidently replied, "My daughter's told me everything. You're a little hooligan who tried to take advantage of her. When she refused, you beat her. Let me tell you, this isn't over. We're going to report you, and you'll be sent to prison." I raised an eyebrow and looked at Bronte. "Is that what you told your mum?" Bronte's eyes darted around nervously. At home, she'd always maintained the image of a good girl. Her mum jumped in. "Don't I know my own daughter? Don't try to slander her." My expression darkened, and I snapped. "She bullies at least a dozen classmates every month at school. Some have been forced to leave, others have developed depression. Did you know about all that?" "You're talking nonsense," Mrs. Calhoun hissed like a cat whose tail had been stepped on. "My daughter is so well-behaved and sensible. She would never do such a thing." She then turned to Bronte, demanding, "Tell them you didn't do it." Bronte immediately raised her hand, her tone resolute. "I swear on my father's life that I have never bullied anyone at school. If I'm lying, may my father never recover from his illness." I almost couldn't believe what I was hearing. "Does your father know how filial you are?" Mrs. Calhoun, however, looked utterly convinced. "No one would joke about their parents' lives. I think you should prepare yourself for prison." I couldn't help but laugh bitterly at myself. I had made the mistake again of trying to reason with them. Enough. At this point, I have no desire to argue further. Once again, I abandoned logic and decided to resolve the issue in the most direct way possible. "What do you mean?" Neither Bronte nor her mother seemed to grasp the gravity of the situation. In fact, if they had paid a bit more attention to how Lorinda and the others were positioned, they might have noticed many issues. But it was too late now. "Die!" I moved quickly, delivering a side kick straight to Bronte's chest. "Ah!" Bronte cried out in pain as she and her wheelchair crashed into her mother, both of them falling to the ground. Bronte looked at me in disbelief. "You dare to hit me here?" "It was convenient," I replied. After delivering that kick, I felt instantly relieved. "Ha ha!" Lorinda Calhoun suddenly laughed from the side. "Calvin, I've already called the police. You won't be smug for long." She had no other choice, after all. Official intervention meant she could no longer take matters into her own hands. Upon hearing this, everyone visibly relaxed. Bronte's mother sneered. "People like you should have been in prison long ago." Lorinda's eyes were full of venom. "Once you're inside, I'll make sure you're well taken care of. Don't you dare do anything stupid in there." Just as she finished speaking, a group of law enforcement officers burst through the door. That was quick. Even Lorinda found it unbelievable. Behind those officers, a round head poked out. It was Jeffrey. "Calvin, mate. I've brought the lads as planned." Lorinda finally understood that these weren't the officers she had called. But it didn't matter either way. She immediately began recounting the events, embellishing as she went along. Seeing that I didn't refute, Lorinda grew even more smug, ready to enjoy the show. Unexpectedly, the inspector gave a thumbs up. "Well done. But you must always prioritize your own safety." Lorinda immediately protested. What do you mean by that? Arrest him already. Bronte's mother also urged anxiously. If you don't make an arrest now, I'll file a complaint against you. The inspector turned to look at the two women. And you two are? I'm Simon Farley's mother. I'm Bronte Calhoun's mother. The two mothers introduced themselves in turn. The inspector's expression turned serious. Simon Farley and Bronte Calhoun are suspects in a major case. We hope you'll cooperate fully with the investigation. What major case? I don't understand. Lorinda was completely baffled. Is there some misunderstanding here? Simon Farley lay silent on the hospital bed. Bronte Calhoun's tears streamed down her face as she cried, Mom, they're wrongly accusing me. They're wrongly accusing me. Bronte sobbed, her face a picture of distress, looking every bit the wronged girl next door. Seeing this, Lorinda Calhoun felt emboldened. My daughter has never lied in her life. You must have made a mistake. Could there be someone with the same name at the school? The detective replied, We rely on evidence in our investigations. The fingerprints of Simon Farley and Bronte Calhoun were found on the body and the murder weapon behind the school. How could that be a mistake? He then produced a sealed plastic bag. Inside was a blood-stained iron rod. At the sight of the rod, Simon finally broke down, sobbing, I didn't know he was so fragile. I only tapped him lightly on the back of his head with the rod. Who knew he'd die just like that? Fletcher Farley, exasperated, said, How could you hit someone on the back of the head with a rod? Only then did Lorinda Calhoun realize something was amiss. She quickly turned to Bronte, hoping to hear an explanation. Is what they're saying true? Her hands were shaking, her eyes clouded with despair. Bronte nodded. Then, as if remembering something, held up 3 fingers. I swear he provoked me first. I didn't mean to hurt him. Hearing this, Lorinda Calhoun collapsed to the floor, as if all strength had left her body. Simon whimpered, Mom, I'm 18 now. I won't go to prison, will I? I rolled my eyes at him and interjected, You've only just realized? Simon coughed up blood and fainted on the spot. Suddenly remembering Jeffrey Atkinson, I asked the detective, Has Jeffrey Atkinson been arrested? The detective glanced outside. That was easy enough. Jeffrey Atkinson could be seen standing just outside the door, handcuffed. This time, he wouldn't be retiring with honor. Revenge was finally mine. I returned to school with renewed determination. More focused than ever before, I was determined to secure a place at a top university, just like those characters in novels who get a second chance at life. Time passed, and the A-level results were released. I scored a total of 300 points, leaving me utterly devastated. Jeffrey, bless him, only managed 280 points but still tried to comfort me, urging me not to give up on life. I couldn't help but reflect on how sharp my mind had been during 6th form. At that age, students seemed to know everything from rocket science to the most trivial facts. After graduation, it doesn't take long for most of that knowledge to fade away. Coming back with a decades-old brain, it was nearly impossible to absorb information like before. Half of those 300 points were probably down to sheer luck. Before I knew it, September had arrived. To our utter amazement, Jeffrey and I ended up at a Russell Group University after all. We had been awarded medals for our significant contributions and were even named Outstanding Youth. Several prestigious universities extended offers to us. Once at university, I divided my time between studying diligently and seeking opportunities to make money. While amassing a fortune proved challenging, my knowledge from my past life made earning a modest income relatively straightforward. A few years later, Jeffrey and I returned to our hometown and started a small company together. After years of hardship, Jeffrey had changed significantly. In his spare time, he even thought to inquire about the Farley family's situation. Simon Farley had been sentenced to death. Bronte Calhoun had been sentenced to 10 years and was still serving her time. At first, no one expected such a heavy sentence. But the victim's family didn't want money. They only wanted Simon Farley to pay with his life. Without a letter of forgiveness from the victim's family, Simon Farley would receive the maximum punishment. Lorinda Calhoun had no choice but to resort to bribery. She had always been arrogant in her actions, making enemies everywhere and never leaving herself a way out. As soon as Simon Farley got into trouble, all of the Farley family's enemies came out of the woodwork. In the end, not only did they fail to save Simon Farley, but several judges were also sent to prison. On the day Simon Farley was executed, Lorinda Calhoun couldn't handle the shock and went mad, rambling incoherently about going abroad to seek help from her long-lost love. Fletcher Farley, who had been a pushover all his life, finally stood his ground and kicked Lorinda Calhoun out. But the Farley family's enemies didn't care about that. They continued to relentlessly pursue the Farley family, and before long, Fletcher Farley went bankrupt. Jeffrey said, "I heard he's now back in his rural hometown, spending his days either farming or fishing. Don't you want to go see him?" I shook my head. "There's no need for that." The end.